everyone, welcome to Community Extras, and hope you guys are having a great discussion as we walk through the book of Daniel together. Really wild chapter this week. King Nebuchadnezzar has died. His family has continued to kind of come and go, and up comes a king named Belshazzar. He's actually more like a prince. The real king is out in a desert in Arabia on a spiritual journey, abandoned his family, abandoned his role, and basically Babylon at this point is a bit of a disaster. There's 60% inflation, and this guy seems like the worst. He seems like a spoiled, entitled brat. He busts into the wine stash while his dad's gone. They start to get drunk. They bust out the stuff that they took from the temple and they start to drink out of it. And God essentially is like, that's it. This crosses a line. And suddenly a floating finger appears and says, essentially, you're judge, you're a lightweight. Tonight, the Medes and Persians are going to come in and take over the empire. And sure enough, that very night, King Belshazzar dies, as Daniel prophesies. So what a wild, wild little scene in that text. And it's just amazing that this text lined up on the week of family dedications. We think of our primary job, if you're a parent, is to share the gospel. It's not to give your children the best stuff. It's not to give them the best education. It's not to give them the best neighborhood. All that stuff can be helpful, but this guy actually had all that stuff and he was ruined. He was a spoiled, entitled brat who's getting drunk off his dad's wine stash. And so you don't want that. The most important thing you can do is help your kids know the Lord, love the Lord, serve the Lord. And that's really the indictment on Belshazzar, because Daniel says, you know what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. You know what God did in your family. You heard about it. And yet in spite of hearing about it, you walked away. Sometimes kids get ruined because the parents fail to teach them about Christ. Sometimes kids get ruined because in spite of all the investment, they still walk away. They're still hard-hearted. They still hate the Lord. They're still full of folly, and they cause all kinds of pain to their home. What's amazing is that God has the perfect son who comes and doesn't live in excess and pleasure, but actually pours himself out, and so that we can have salvation, so that we could be adopted into his family. And so just some interesting questions for us tonight. How do we help those we're responsible for? If you have children, our friends, how do we help them grow in the Lord and walk with the Lord? What are some things that are just helpful there? How do we not abandon our post? Maybe where are we tempted right now to not do the responsibility that God has given to us, to avoid it or to shirk it or to just get away from it? And how do we do what God has for us well? And then for those of us who grew up in Christian homes, how is that a gift? How do we see it as a blessing? What was the blessing of that? I think one of the lies sometimes people think is, I wish I had a big testimony so I could have a cool story. I actually think it's an amazing story to grow up in a Christian home. And so hope you guys have a great discussion and look forward to hearing how it goes.